On today's Hiwatt Soundbite, we're premiering a brand new mini-series called Mix 911. And today's session, it's all about tracking DIs and Japanese metal. Well, I'm excited to share the very first of what will be many sessions that we're going to tag Mix 911. Now, in these Mix 911 sessions, we're going to expose various techniques that you can use to better prepare your tracks for a killer sounding mix. From tuning vocals to recreating a brand new bass track, each session will focus on various aspects of the process. And we're going to be pulling examples from the archives. So these are going to be real world examples, and this is going to be a lot of fun. So in today's Mix 911, I want to talk about why I believe it is just so critically important for us as engineers to record a separate DI signal when tracking our main rhythm guitars. Now, I'm not suggesting that you record DI alongside of every single guitar overdub that you do on a project, because that can be a huge nightmare. But when we're talking about the main driving guitar part of the song, what I would consider the main rhythm guitars, I know it's a pain, but if you take the time to properly and carefully record a nice clean DI, direct injection signal from that guitar, those guitars are going to take up a really big place in our mix and determine a big part of the sound of our overall mix. So by taking the time to track those DIs separately, even if we come up with a killer guitar sound while we're tracking, there's just something so valuable as a mix engineer to have a clean DI signal to start from. This one practice can literally save an entire project. Let's dive in and have a listen to what I'm talking about. Well, I'm pulling today's example from a really killer Japanese metal band that I mixed a few years back called Baal, B-A-A-L. So this is an excellent example of why it's so important to record the DI signal of those main rhythms. Mikito, the guitar player in this band, oh my gosh, I have so much respect for Mikito, not just because he's an amazing guitar player, but because he had the awareness and he had the forward thinking to understand that he didn't have the available tools to get a really killer guitar tone, not the kind of sound that he knew his band needed. So you know what he did? He tracked a beautifully clean DI signal from his main rhythm guitar for the entire album. And I mean, as a mix engineer, that is just golden. For someone to have sent me a track to mix where I'm expected to come up with this really heavy killer mix, and they send me all of the DI tracks for their rhythm guitars, that just makes all of the difference for me. It gives me so many more options. It allows me to completely build the sound from scratch, as was the case in this track. Let's have a listen to what I'm talking about. Okay, I've got this track Awake. I've got it queued up to the very last chorus. I've turned the vocals off just so we can kind of focus more on the guitars. So what I'll do to start, I'll just play a reference mix of just the basic tracks as they were provided to me. So there's been no production, no sampling, no anything has been done at this point. Very simple, but you know, you can get it. It's a heavy track. And now we'll switch to the produced track and we'll have a quick listen to what ended up happening to this thing. So the inclusion of those DI'd rhythm guitars made every bit of difference in this entire project. It allowed me to totally transform these tracks. I mean, this is exactly the same performance with two radically different kind of tones applied. And you can see just how big a difference it can make to the ultimate mix. It's unreal. Here's the originals. And with the DI, I'm able to recreate this. You know, it's the exact same performance, just two very different guitar setups. And what a difference it makes in the ultimate track. I mean, if I bypass the amp sims and the EQ that I've got on this, listen to how terrible these things sound. Now that definitely does not sound big and heavy, right? But put some amp simulation on there and some EQ. Yes. Now that makes me smile, and it probably means I won't have to floss for like a couple of days. So obviously there's more production going on here than just like an updated rhythm guitar sound. I think I replaced the kick and added a snare and some toms. I think I even recreated the bass track with Melodyne. That's another whole session we're gonna do on that one. You can give tracks like this a really big facelift with the kind of standard tools that we always reach for, but without those DI'd guitars, without that perfectly clean and well-recorded signal from the DI from the guitar, we have very few options. I mean, when somebody gives us that big rhythm guitar sound without the DIs, you're pretty much stuck with it. Of course, as engineers, we can do a lot. We can even reamp and do things, but it will never be the same effect as having that original DI. So when I personally record almost any project today and I'm tracking rhythm guitars, every time I take the time to make sure that I find myself a nice DI, a quality DI. It doesn't have to be an active one like this, but plug your guitar into the input and take that through and feed it to your amplifier. But most importantly, take that balanced output, feed it into a nice preamp, listen to the tone, dial it in a little bit, make sure you're not going to overload it, and track the signal from this DI box, because it will literally make a world of difference in the mix. Look, Radial Engineering, made in Canada. Wow, what a killer sounding DI this is. Whew. Have fun tracking DIs. Well, thank you very much for sitting in on today's session. And if you feel this session has value, please consider subscribing to my channel. And by all means, go ahead and share this session with a friend or colleague.